Hey folks, Joshua Steele here, and I'm coming at you right now from one of my favorite places in the entire world. I'm in Lviv, Ukraine, the city that I have lived in for nearly a quarter century now. And I'll try to get to the point as quickly as possible here, but the reason that I'm making this video is because there are things happening, especially in the last couple of days, that have pulled at my heart in such a way that I felt that I couldn't not make this video. I'm outside right now. I'll give you a little 360 view here. This is my neighborhood where I live in Ukraine. Happily, it's still free. At the moment, we don't have an air raid going on. It's about 5 p.m. People are coming home from work. It's about -1 Celsius. So for you people that use Fahrenheit, that's, I don't know, 30, 29, 30, somewhere in there. But the reason I wanted to make this video primarily is because of a statement that recently came out in the news, you've probably seen it, made by the president of our country, President Trump, with regard to Ukraine, and in particular, Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky. And I've talked with a lot of people about the war in Ukraine. I'm sure you have too. You may guess, or you may know how I feel about the war in Ukraine if you followed our work and our family here. We even did a podcast for about a year, so hopefully you have some context. But recently, of course, we had elections in the United States. We now have a new president, and he was the conservative choice. I know many of my friends and family, probably most of the people that I know, Christians, conservatives, evangelicals, all voted for him. And before I make the comments that I want to make in this video, I want to reiterate, lest there be any doubt, that I absolutely consider myself to be an American patriot and a conservative. I haven't suddenly become woke overnight. I don't support abortion. I'm no fan of Biden and his policies. I've probably never voted for a Democrat a day in my life. But one thing I do know is the state of Ukraine, because I live here. Now, I have a statement here that President Trump published on his social media platform called Truth Social. I've got it printed out right here. And I won't read the whole thing. I'm just going to pick out parts. It's all over the internet right now. You can see it. But in this statement, which came out within the last 24 to 48 hours, Trump castigates Zelensky as a dictator. He accuses him of being a dictator, and he connects that with the fact that they've not held elections here in a long time. He says that Zelensky's done a terrible job, that his country's shattered, that America has spent $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won. In another interview that Trump gave recently, it's not in this particular statement, but it's a different one, he as much as said that Zelensky and Ukraine started this war, that they shouldn't have ever done it, as though it was a mistake that they stumbled into that could have been avoided. Now, I know a lot of people are confused. When I was in the States recently, I talked with people who their head was full of ideas about how corrupt Ukraine was, how bad Zelensky was. And certainly Zelensky's no angel. He's a politician. I'm not saying he's perfect. We have corruption in America too. But I wanted to go through a couple of these points and provide some context and some clarity, not as an analyst of some kind or even an expert. For those of you who don't know, I'm a missionary. The main reason I'm in Ukraine is not political. In fact, most of the time I don't comment on political stuff. When it comes to elections and the various things that float around the internet, I hate Facebook debates. I'm here to tell people about Jesus Christ. But the fact is that I live in Ukraine. I speak the Ukrainian language. I speak it fluently. I've lived amongst these people for nearly a quarter century. And while yes, my primary mission is to preach the gospel and to tell people about Christ, this nation and its people are very close to my heart. And it grieves me when I see Americans, especially Americans that I know and trust and respect, falling for what is in essence Russian propaganda. So I want to go through a couple of these points quickly and give you my take. And then at the end, I'll point you to some resources online where you can look some of these things up for yourself. So the first one we'll talk about is the idea that the United States has given Ukraine $350 billion, that maybe it should never have given it, and maybe this money has been squandered. I think a lot of people have this picture in their mind that Biden just, put pallets of cash on a C-5 cargo plane and started sending it to Ukraine. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I've looked into this question quite a bit. First of all, I believe the $350 billion number is way high. There are some pretty reliable numbers out there if you look as far as the amount of money that the United States has invested in Ukraine and its defense. But a lot of that money was not invested in such a way where cash was put on a pallet and flown to Zelensky and then, he went and put a new driveway at his mansion. No, that's not what happened. This is money that went, in many cases, to American contractors who were manufacturing these weapons. Sometimes we sent old stores of weapons to Ukraine, weapons that would have been either destroyed or decommissioned anyway, and then we paid American manufacturers to replace them. So I won't get into all the finances. I don't have a ledger from the United States government, but there are very clear publicly available figures online. And the idea that we just shipped crates and crates or pallets of cash to the Ukrainians, which were then squandered. I've heard ridiculous stories about that the Ukrainians were getting these weapons or this cash or whatever and then selling it on the black market, all kinds of things that are patently false. And you may say, well, how do you know that? Now, I want to underline that just because I live in Ukraine, it doesn't mean I see everything. I'm in Lviv, but I get around. We have people from our church that are in the trenches, on the front lines fighting. I have direct connections with people who are in the military. I speak the language. I can read the Ukrainian language reports. I can read the Russian language reports. So no, I don't know everything. Nobody does. But the thing I want to stress is that I am speaking to this issue as somebody who is in the midst of it. I'm not just sitting on my computer compiling reports and deciding which ones I want to believe, which unfortunately is where many of us are. That's the option that we're left with. But the 350 billion mark, I believe, is way high. But that, to me, is maybe a secondary issue. The thing I really take issue with is these next 2 points. This idea that Trump said in his interview that Ukraine should have never started the war, that is preposterous. That is a slap in the face for a nation of free people that are fighting and giving their lives to maintain that freedom. I don't know anything that is more central to the essence of what it means to be an American than to fight for your freedom. What did we do? If our nation was invaded by a foreign power, by China, it doesn't matter who it was, and they took 20% of our territory, would we not fight? And if somebody came along and said, what's wrong with you warmongering people? Why don't you just, you should have never gotten into this. That's absolutely preposterous. Let it be clear. And this, you don't need to watch my video to learn this. This is all over the place. There is clear evidence. Russia invaded Ukraine, not the other way around. Ukraine did not provoke Russia. This was not NATO provoking Russia. Russia has its own reasons. I can get into that in another video if you're interested. A lot of them are geopolitical. They want Ukrainian territory, and not only. They want a lot more than that. But the idea that Ukraine somehow started this war is absolutely false. It's absolutely preposterous. And I am shocked and dismayed that our president has said that. Now, if you're watching this video, there's a high chance that you voted for Trump. And I realize this may be an uncomfortable truth for you, but you need to realize that what your president just said is a blatant lie. Now, we can talk all day long about why he said that. There are theories floating around out there that he's doing this on purpose as a point of strategy to, put certain people in their place and get in a better place for negotiations. I hope that's true. I hope there's some sense somewhere in this. But the fact of the matter is, the evidence that we have today, based on President Trump's published statements, as Ryan Beth, a well-known military commentator, said, the president's statements are indefensible, and many of them, meaning the ones in this social media post, are untrue, demonstrably untrue. They're untrue if you just look at the information that's freely available online. But I'm putting my voice here to share with you as somebody who lives here in Ukraine. That is where I am right now. I'm standing in the city of Lviv, speaking with you in English, but with people around me, I speak in Ukrainian. Now, the next and last point that I want to point out that Trump the accusation that he leveled at Zelensky, is that Zelensky is a dictator. And a lot of the Russian propaganda that is aimed at destabilizing Ukraine, at turning people's minds and positions against Ukraine, this is a common theme. It centralizes around the idea of demonizing Zelensky, and they call him or they talk about his government as being the Kiev regime. They try to delegitimize it. In fact, depending on what day of the week you're listening to Russian propaganda, they try to delegitimize the very existence of Ukraine. They deny that Ukraine is even a legitimate country. It's just a rebellious Russian region in their minds. Nothing could be further from the truth. But this idea that Zelensky is a dictator, is he a dictator? I once saw a post on Facebook, this was several years ago, from a person that I very much respect, a godly believer that I have massive amounts of respect for. And this person just did what many of us do, and they reposted a little meme, a bit of information that they had found. And this was a picture of a large crowd, I think it was in Kiev somewhere, and there was a lot, in the picture there was just thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people congregating in this square in Kiev. And the caption, and this was probably, I don't know, this is before the war, but maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago. And the caption of the picture said something to the effect that the government has just made it legal to preach the gospel in Ukraine publicly, and crowds of people are thronging the streets and everybody's so excited because finally the oppression is over and the government has legalized Christianity. That was absolutely absurd. There has never been, in the nearly 25 years that I have lived here, I've been here since 2001, there has never been a time when it's been illegal to be a Christian, to preach Christianity, to hand someone a tract on the street, to talk with someone about Jesus. Never. Now, yes, we've had our run-ins with the Catholic Church, there's been political issues and so forth, but on the whole, I would say as an American, I have way, way, way more freedom here to preach the gospel, to tell anyone I want about the Lord. I can go into the center right now, grab my guitar, sing songs, and talk to people about the Lord. Nobody will give me any issues about it. Not from a legality standpoint. So this idea that Ukraine is this place of oppression, or that they're oppressing Christians, that Zelensky is ruling with an iron fist as a dictator, this is absolutely false. And again, I say that as somebody who lives here, who operates as a missionary, who has as my goal to tell others about Christ. Now, one reason that people are starting to point to the fact that, or this idea, this notion that Zelensky's a dictator, is because Ukraine has not held election. Now, Ukraine has 5-year presidential election cycles, not like our 4, they have 5-year. I have been here, just to give you context, I have been here for every presidential election in Ukraine's independence except the first one. When I came to Ukraine, their president was Kuchma. After that, there was Yushchenko. After that, there was Yanukovych. Yanukovych was deposed in 2014. He actually fled the country, by the way. The CIA didn't kick him out, as you may have heard. He fled the country by himself. After that, Petro Poroshenko was elected, and after that, Volodymyr Zelensky was elected. I was here through all of them. And based on the normal election cycle, I believe that the election coming up where Zelensky would have had to stand for re-election would have been in 2024, and that didn't happen. Why? Simply because of the Constitution. The Constitution, and my understanding is this was added in 2015, says that during a time of war, as long as martial law is enforced, elections cannot be held. That was not something that Zelensky came up with. That was in place, on the books, in the Constitution, before he ever became president. And really, if you think about it, if they were to try and hold elections today, how would they even do that? About 20% of Ukraine's territory is not even under its control. Millions upon millions of Ukrainians have been forced to flee their country. If they were to somehow hold elections, to say nothing of the air raids and the attacks and the safety issues that would be involved, just untold amounts of people, numbers of Ukrainians, would be disenfranchised, you might say. They would be underrepresented in the vote. They would be unable to vote. Russia would love it if Ukraine had elections because they love meddling in elections. They love trying to influence them. So the idea that Zelensky is somehow clinging to power, that he's trying to build an empire for himself, that he's acting as a dictator because there haven't been elections, that is utter nonsense. There is a reason that they haven't had elections. That reason is lawful. It's part of their constitution. When the war is over and martial law is removed, Then if Zelensky were to stay on and try to cling to power, okay, maybe you'd have an argument. But right now, no. Having elections right this moment, in the middle of the war, with air raids going on, with so much of Ukraine's territory not under its control, it's not feasible, it's not possible. I'm by far not the only one who's talked about this. This issue's been brought up even, way before Trump ever made this statement. So again, is Zelensky a Christian? Is Zelensky a wonderful politician who's completely honest? I'm sure Zelensky has his flaws, okay? I'm not, in fact, just again, for context, the Lviv Oblast where I live is the only, if I remember correctly from when the elections happened, it's the only oblast in the entire country that did not support Zelensky in the presidential election. Lviv Oblast actually went for Poroshenko, his opponent. Every other oblast in the nation supported Zelensky. And I want to say too, in closing up, just about Zelensky, say what you will about him, think what you will about his character or whatever, but the fact that we are here right now is largely thanks to Volodymyr Zelensky. Because when the Russians invaded, which we were all dumbfounded, none of us believed they would actually do it because it seemed so crazy. But when that happened, that terrible day 3 years ago on February 24th, Zelensky made a decision to stay here at peril to his own life. If Zelensky wanted just to go into retirement and live out his days, he would have fled. In fact, the United States contacted him and said, look, we'll give you a chopper, we'll take you out of here. And Zelensky very famously said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. And he stayed to fight. He got out his cell phone, he got several of his ministers there, they walked through the city of Kyiv, and they did a selfie video, and they said, hey guys, don't panic. We're still here, your president's still here, your finance minister, the prime minister is still here, different ones. And so, yes, we can talk about mistakes that Zelensky might have made, whether he should have done this or that differently. But the fact is, had Zelensky not made the decision that he made to stay, which I contend was a courageous one, a very brave one, it is highly probable that Ukraine would have capitulated and Putin would have taken it and he'd be in Kyiv right now, if he wanted to be. So, in closing, Russia is the aggressor here, not Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine did not want that. Ukraine did not start this war. There was no deal for Ukraine to make. Ukraine didn't antagonize Russia and then fail to be conciliatory. Russia invaded because Russia wants to control Ukraine. Earlier today, somebody asked me in a comment on Facebook a question which was, it was just exceedingly unintelligent, or perhaps they were a Russian troll, I'm not sure. But they said, well, why did Russia invade Ukraine? They're sort of implying like, well, okay, if this is not Ukraine's fault, why did Russia do it? And I suppose there's a lot of ways you could answer that, but think about, why did Hitler invade Poland? Why does Stalin try to starve his own people? Why does any ruler who oppresses do the evil things that they do to take away that which belongs to someone else? It's sin, it's evil. It goes back to the devil. So to wrap up here, I want to say one more time, talking about President Trump, I consider myself a conservative. I love America. I want America to be a great nation. I love freedom. I was born in Texas. It's in my blood. I don't support abortion. I don't support the woke agenda. I'm not Democratic, or I'm not a Democrat. I believe in democratic values. But I would say to you, if you are, say, I don't know, a conservative or Republican, whatever, maybe you voted for Trump. Maybe you're excited about the things that Trump will do or could do for our nation. Maybe you're happy about the things that he did in his first term for our nation. I would agree that there are some good things that Trump has done, and I hope he'll do some good in the future. But you need to be brave enough to call a spade a spade. And at the end of the day, if the man you voted for as president is telling lies, you need to say it. You need to be willing to reconcile yourself. If you approach this issue and say, well, I voted for Trump, and so if Trump says that Ukraine is bad, then he must be bad. Trump must know what he's talking about. That is a weak intellectual position. You're closing your eyes, you're burying your head in the sand. Don't do that. Trump is spouting lies. I have it printed right here. This is not true, and I say that as somebody who lives here, who has lived here for years, who speaks the language of these people, and I care about these people. I want to see them come to Christ, yes. But when another nation comes in and bombs cities, rapes people, murders people, the atrocities that Russia has committed are unfathomable. I have seen them with my own eyes. I lost one of my best friends to the Russians. We have grieved him. It's horrible. But to wrap up, I urge you to open your eyes and understand that what is being said right now about Ukraine, about Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is patently false. And we need to stand against it. We need to stand with Ukraine, yes, but we need to stand for justice. We need to stand for the things that matter to God. God says that he that condemns the just is an abomination. Pick your side very carefully. God's side is clear. Please keep standing with Ukraine. Keep praying for this nation. Pray for us. Pray for the many missionaries. If you talk to any of the other American missionaries that I've met who are here, they'll tell you the same thing that I'm telling you now. Ukraine needs us. This is a time to stand with them and to stand for what's right. Thank you for watching this video, and God bless you.